Right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this morning's webinar. I'm really grateful that this morning we've got Stacey Lidgate from Cysiam, who's one of their business directors. And we've also joined by Lucy Daly. She's a security consultant from C3I Solutions based here in sunny Dorset. So you're really welcome to the webinar this morning. I kind of take it that most of you are already members of the SWCRC, but if not, please feel free to join us via our website after this particular webinar. So really, I suppose, without further ado, perhaps Stacey and Lucy, just have a quick introduction of your respective businesses, please, and then we can crack into this morning's webinar. Cyber incidents, what you really need to know, and I'm really looking forward to this one. So Stacey, if I can ask you just to briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, no worries at all. Thanks for having me, Ross. My name's Stacey Lidgate, as Ross said, a director of cyber company Cysiam. And we focus on three main things: managed cybersecurity solutions, where businesses will outsource their cybersecurity to us for continual monitoring and detection of threats and attacks. Also, cybersecurity consultancy, so baselining your cyber resilience and maturity, designing a plan with you to get better and keeping to that plan. And then the final thing is international capacity building. So we work a lot with the government, HMG, and the Foreign Office in particular to teach and develop cybersecurity internationally with our partners and allies.
Thanks, Stacey. That's great. And Lucy, if you could just briefly introduce yourself and C3IA, please.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. Hi, everyone. I'm Lucy. I'm a security consultant at C3IA Solutions. Our head office is in Poole, but we do work all over the UK. Most of us are remote. It's a national cybersecurity centre certified cybersecurity consultancy, and I've been full-time there since 2020. But prior to that, I studied cybersecurity management at Bournemouth University from 2016 to 2020, and I had a bit of a placement at C3A Solutions from 2018 to 2020. So I've stayed in Dorset, but yeah, we are all over the UK, really.
Fantastic, thank you, Lucy. Right, without further ado, then I'll bow out, and the stage is yours.
Great. I don't know about bowing out, Ross. We're relying on you to ably drive the slides for us. So
I'll be in the background, Stacey. Don't worry.
Next slide, please, if you don't mind. It's a throwback to COVID. Next slide, please. So you've had an introduction to both of us. Stacey and Lucy will be your double act for today. Next slide, please, if you don't mind, Ross. So what we wanted to focus on today was what happens if you are the victim of a cyber incident, unplanned, and surprise. How do you deal with that? What are the things that you need to keep in mind? Delve into a little bit around what the threat is like. So Lisa's going to take us through some statistics around what does the kind of threat in the UK look like, and what are the stats. How do you become more cyber resilient? So some top tips to be able to kind of look at what's going on in your organizations and make sure that you can really make some things stronger and resilient. And then we'll try and leave about 10 minutes or so at the end for questions and answers. If you do have questions as we go through, I think what I'd said to Ross is if you whack them in the chat, he can keep an eye on those, and if it's right time to kind of interject, then we'll stop and answer those as we go along. But we'll definitely leave some time at the end for a Q&A. Thank you very much. Okay, so it's the screen that none of us ever want to see, I think, next. Your system is encrypted. So there are many versions of this type of screen, but this hopefully kind of sets some hairs running and brings up a little bit of dread in people's stomach. It's like, what do you do if you get this type of screen? And Ross, if you just click through the next types of screens, what happens if, even worse, you've got no access to your systems and applications that you would normally use? What if you've been the victim of ransomware, and if your data has been stolen and that has been published on social media? Ransomware kind of criminals are saying that they've got you and they're threatening to publish those types of files. And the next slide as well, Ross. And what happens if you're faced with that kind of countdown that says, unless you pay this kind of thing, we're going to release maybe sensitive data, personal identifying data, anything. The worst possible thing for any kind of organization to encounter. Reputational damage, it could mean fines, it could mean operational downtime. So if you're a business that relies on your systems and applications to work, it could be awful, it could be damaging. And I was at a conference with Lucy and Ross last week down in Taunton, where we heard some real horror stories about cyber attacks these days can be the difference between businesses, you know, surviving, not just a little interruption to what happens, but it can literally be the difference between bankruptcy or not. So what we wanted to do today is give you some top tips around, if you're faced with any of those things, what do you do? So the do's. Ross, next slide, please. So please make sure that you've thought about your incident response plans and instigate them, like get them going, get them up and running. If you don't have them, there are some things that you can do. If you're a member of the CRC, fantastic, give them a call and help. If you've got cyber providers like C3AI and Cesium on the books, phone them immediately. Most people that will be providing these types of responses will have a kind of agreement to give you that type of service within 15 minutes to an hour if you're in an incident scenario. Police are really important. 101, that's normally the first point of contact. They can talk you through then any contact with regional policing and any kind of support that you can get from your regional police forces. But a cyber attack is a kind of criminal matter, and it should be reported. Other thing that you need to think about, your cyber or crime insurance provider. So one of the top tips that we always say is make sure you've got that number to hand, make sure that you've got your policy number to hand as well. So, you know, worst case, you're keeping it on the computer somewhere and you can't get hold of it, make sure it's really easily accessible. We know that pen and paper sometimes is a little bit au fait, but in the worst case, who's got access to those details? How accessible is it? Don't forget that you might need to call them when you can't access your computers and systems. Biggest thing, stay calm, act rationally, and don't do anything that might jeopardize stuff in the future. We'll come on to the don'ts. Reporting wise, I mentioned 101 for the police. Other people that you were definitely going to need to think about, the NCSC, so the National Cyber Security Centre. They've got dedicated web pages that you can access that you might not want to do in the heat of the moment, but certainly will be able to kind of guide you through some things. Action fraud is another place that you're going to have to think about. And if data has been stolen, there is a 72-hour window that the Information Commissioner, the ICO, will give you to be able to report that kind of data breach. So it's not necessarily something that you need to report instantly, but you have got a window of 72 hours. A lot of the time we would recommend to people, even if you think that some data may have gone, it's worth having liaise with ICO as one of the first things that you do. But again, your cyber insurer or any cyber supplier that you've got will normally talk you through a lot of those things. Thanks, Ross. The don'ts. So don't try and hide it. The best way to get through this is being open, honest, transparent. One of the biggest things that we always talk to a lot of our clients about is that immediate response. I think if people have panicked, we've often seen before plug sockets kind of pulled out of walls or power supplies to computers turned off. That's one of the worst things that you can do. What a forensic expert and a lot of cyber experts will need is a live computer running with all the memory kind of safe and in a good state. That's where they can do a lot of those investigations from. So the advice that we would always give is to isolate. If you can disconnect it from a network, if you can put a device into flight mode, if it's a telephone or something like that, if you can disconnect a network cable, that's what we would always advise. But don't turn off anything from the power. That can often cause more problems than good. As soon as an incident happens, we often see people like, oh, was it somebody that clicked on something? Was it someone that did something? In the moment, that's not going to be the most important thing. Mistakes happen, and this is why we often talk about good cyber hygiene. There's lots of ways that an attack could have got in. Trying to find out in the first few hours kind of what's happened. Let's not try and blame anybody. What we want to do is concentrate on getting your organization back up and running as soon as possible. And then the final one is paying ransoms. Definitely something we would never condone, purely because you don't ever really know where that money is going to go, especially if it's in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. A lot of the time, that is funding serious organized crime. It could be funding terrorism, human trafficking, all of the horrific things that we see all over the news. And a lot of the time that is against kind of bribery and corruption acts, not particularly ethical. So certainly our policy is never to pay. And fundamentally, always check with your cyber insurer and see what their position is. They will have people in place to say, maybe we could negotiate with these criminals, but if you're if you're wanting to pay, the likelihood is that you are going to go on a list of people that have been known to pay, and the risk that you're taking is that you will be hit by another attack in a very, very short amount of time afterwards. So yeah, please never pay any ransoms without seeking proper advice from insurance providers, and thinking about the impacts to your reputation, and that kind of ethical stance, and what it might mean to your business. Thanks, Rosh. So, Lucy, do you want to talk us through kind of why is it so important, and why are we starting to see a lot of kind of incidents happen?
Yeah, thanks, Stace.
No worries.
So if we go on to the next slide, please, Ross. Yeah, so every year, about April time, the cybersecurity breaches survey comes out, and I think it's a great report. It always shows you like the latest threats and trends. So as you can see here, probably of literally no surprise, phishing attacks is the #1 identified, the most common types of breaches that people notice in their organizations. Individually as well, at home, we're always getting those phishing attacks on our inbox, and we can't get away from them. They are the cheapest types of attacks, and they are the easiest ones to conduct. You don't have to do anything technical. You just need to create a very convincing email and send it off, and hope that you get the right person at the right time. Ransomware at the bottom, we see it in the news all the time. So might be a bit surprising why it's only there, but phishing attacks, they are so easy to conduct, and they can send millions out at a time. So that's why we need to really protect ourselves against them, and they obviously attack human error. So if we go on to the next slide, please. We can see the increase from last year to this year, and that's only going to keep rising. So I think the next slide, please, Ross. So I'm showing a kind of a business email compromise from 2021, but it's still relevant today because these types of attacks are having risen year on year by 72%. So although this specific Microsoft 365 phishing scam was from 2021, it's still being used today, and that's really important. So this specific type of attack, it relies on the target opening up what seems to be a spreadsheet on a price revision. It's actually an HTML file in disguise. When they click on that link, they're taken to a malicious website, and a pop-up appears. They're obviously being shown to, or you've been logged out of your 365 account. Please type in your credentials again. Obviously, it's fake, and they type their credentials in, and the cyber criminal running that scam is collecting all of that data. And this type of scam is still happening. 77% of business email compromise attacks bypass the built-in protection layers that all email providers have in place. And I think it's really important to keep that in mind. They can bypass these protections. So what we need to do at our end is protect our employees, and they're trying to get at the human error. They're trying to manipulate us, and unfortunately it works. So we need to protect ourselves just as much as we're protecting our technical security. 28% of these attacks are opened by our employees, and a massive 15% of them are actually replied to. So it's really important that we do protect ourselves. If we can go to the next slide, please. So here is a type of phishing email. This might be more of a standard one. You might have seen things like this in your inbox. And the best thing you can do to protect yourself is just hovering your mouse over the link. It's best to it's best to use your inbox on your laptop. It's really quite hard to detect these features through your phone email. As you can see, they've obviously spoofed. So they've faked a paypal.com domain. That isn't actually theirs. As you can see next to that, it says from outlook.com, and you'll be able to see that if you hover your mouse over. And just by doing that really does protect you from opening up a phishing scam link embedded within an email. Obviously, nothing is that urgent. take a step back, really think about it, try not to panic, because these emails may look so convincing. And I think the next example shows a phone number. So not only do they try and get you to open an attachment or click on a link, you know, they might tell you to ring a number. Don't do that, obviously. If you're not sure, maybe contact your bank, for example, separately by the actual number, and just, you know, try and look out for these signs. If it's urgent, if they're making you try and do something, if they're saying, dear customer, it's most likely, you know, going to be a scam, and they should probably refer to you by your actual name, you know, things like that. So if we go to the next slide, please. So Stacey will talk about this a bit later, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, but I think it's quite shocking. This graph here shows that actually 21% of businesses have a formal incident response plan in place, which is crazy in a sense, because it's inevitable that we are going to be, you know, potentially a victim of a cyber attack. They're just getting more and more sophisticated, and there's so many of them. I kind of tell myself, if I wake up in the middle of the night, I will never ever look at my emails, because even though we know what things to look out for, I don't want to be, you know, half asleep, panicked, worried, stressed when I click sorry when I click open a scamming email. So it's best to know to have those certain things in place before we get scammed. We know what to do, and I'll let Stacey talk about that a bit later on. And the next slide, please. So everyone is vulnerable. It doesn't matter who you are in the organization, what your job title is, what you do. You know, you need to make sure that cybersecurity and the basic cybersecurity measures that we're going to talk about in a second, you're using that all the time. And you know, the cyber criminals, they want to just attack the company. They don't care who they go to get that information. You know, they will try and try and get that data. So if we go on to the next slide, please, and we'll talk about one of the most important ones here, backing up your data. It's really important to make backing up your data part of your everyday business. So keeping them separate from your computer, having at least 2 separate backups. So one on the cloud, one physical, because if a cyber criminal gets to your computer and they install ransomware, that ransomware can spread onto your backups. So it's really important to have physical and cloud separated backups. We need to also make sure that we protect the integrity and availability of those backups. So that's why it's important that we restrict access to data backups. So only admins, for example, can back up their data. And the next slide, please. Maybe quite an obvious one, you know, for most people, having antivirus software installed is a really great way of protecting against malware. Firewalls on Macs, for example, they have a firewall feature on them. All you need to do is switch that on, and you're already protecting yourself a bit more, you know, adding an extra layer of protection by just turning on. If it comes with those features, enable them. You know, they're there to be used. Never download an app from any random website. Always make sure you go on the Apple App Store or Google Play Store. Make sure that only admins can install software. You don't want anyone in your organization to just be able to install any kind of software onto your computers. Make sure that these are up to date. If you're able to, make sure that they are automatically updating apps, software, operating systems. Make sure it's all updated, because these include security updates. It's not just the newest features. When the product can no longer support security updates, this means it's end of life, and you should really consider replacing it, because you don't want something vulnerable and connected to the internet. You don't want the cyber criminals to be able to exploit those vulnerabilities. So they do still need to be updating the latest software and security updates. Also, to control how USB drives are used, so blocking access to physical ports, making sure antivirus tools can scan these. You don't want anyone to pick up a random USB stick on the side of the road, stick it in the work laptop, and then run a malware. So we want to prevent that from happening. Keeping your smartphones and tablets safe. Everything I'm speaking about now, we don't need to just do at work. We need to do it at home as well. If you have families and children, if they have tablets, it's really important that they are, secure when using the internet. So it's really important to have a PIN or a biometric, like a Face ID, when you open your iPhone or your smartphone. It comes with a Find My iPhone app. There's also Android versions available. You can track these devices if you've lost them. You can lock them, you can wipe them remotely, and you can retrieve a backup. So that's really important to be able to do that. Obviously, we've spoken about keeping the apps up to date. If it's end of life, if it no longer receives updates, then definitely, replace it. If you have loads of apps on your phone and you don't use half of them, get rid of them. If you don't need them, you don't want them to be a a potential attack surface for cyber criminals. And also try not to use public Wi-Fi hotspots. You don't know how secure they are. If you go to a hotel lobby and it says, free hotel Wi-Fi and there's no password, you have no idea who's running that Wi-Fi. It could be someone in the hotel lobby waiting for you to click on their Wi-Fi and type in your bank details, and then they've got all of your information. It's best to use your mobile network, enable a VPN, a virtual private network if you can, and you can always hotspot off your phone. So that's always better to do. Passwords. We're all sick of passwords, but they aren't going away, so we still have to use them. But the best thing to do is to have an extra layer of protection. So having something such as two-step verification, where we can download an authentication app onto our phone. So once we've typed in our password, the app will pop up saying, type this PIN in as well. So we have a password and a PIN. And that really prevents the cyber criminal from bypassing and getting into our accounts if we have that extra layer of protection. The NCSC have suggested that the strongest type of password is just 3 random words, and make sure that someone who knows you well wouldn't be able to guess your password in 20 attempts. And of course, with those 3 random words, you can add numbers, characters at the end, uppercase, lowercase, and all of those basic standards that we know already. Obviously, never use the same password across accounts. You should really store those securely. So using a password manager, which encrypts, so it scrambles up your password and stores it securely. Also, you don't have to remember that password, so it will probably be more secure in the sense that you'll think of a crazy long password if you don't have to remember it. And you can physically lock them away as well, and changing default passwords, such as on your Wi-Fi. So as we've spoken about, phishing, they use your publicly available information online. So it's really important to think about what you do post. You don't have to delete all of your social media accounts, but it's really important to know that you should think about what you post before you post it. Make sure certain things are, private and not going out to everyone. If you're on holiday, that's great. Have a good time, but maybe post about it when you get home. You want to also think about your physical security at home, and not just, your online security. It kind of all links together. Block when necessary, and never accept connections from people you don't know, because anyone can make a fake profile and pretend to be a recruiter, for example. So we've kind of talked about phishing scams already and the signs to look out for, and the fact that they do use your publicly available information online to make the messages more convincing. They try to trick you into revealing sensitive information, clicking on a link, ringing that phone number, opening an infected attachment. They pretend to be someone you might know or your director of the company. They might fear you into doing something immediately, and you don't want to disappoint the director of the organization, so you need to take a step back and think, is it actually them? It's also important to understand your organization's policies and processes, because cyber criminals will try to exploit normal business communications and processes. So for example, if you're getting an email from the director saying, please sign this DocuSign immediately, and you've never used DocuSign in your organization, then maybe, don't rush to click on that link. And always tell people, as Stacey has mentioned, the longer it's left, the worse it gets.
Cheers, Lucy, some great tips there. So an incident response plan we talked about kind of earlier. If you do find yourself a victim of attack, instigating that incident response plan is going to be the thing that you need to do. And that incident response plan can be as simple or complicated as you need it to be for your business. But at its simplest level, an instruction of who, why, what, where, when. So if you find yourself in a cyber incident, who has the responsibilities to respond, who is going to lead getting everybody together, what actions need to be taken and in what steps, and what else do you need to think about? So lots of different phases of an incident. That diagram in the corner, preparing for it, so that's exercising your response plan. But once you've gone into that incident response, there'll be several different phases to it. Investigating the incident, so trying to analyze like what the root cause is with professionals, eradicating and kind of recovering your systems, and then kind of looking through as that lessons learned. What happened? What could we have done differently? How might we have prevented it? And what steps do we need to take to strengthen our organization and make sure that it doesn't happen again? I think really, really important to point out, like in mine and Lucy and Ross's point, in our experience, a lot of the time it can be human error that creeps into kind of incident responses. People being really confused about the steps that they need to take, not being quite sure what needs to happen, never having experienced one before. So the more that you can practice that, even if it's asking the question, 15 minutes in a meeting, are we really prepared for what might happen if we suddenly lost all of our systems? And don't forget, an incident could be as something as simple as our Wi-Fi goes down and is unavailable for a week. What do we do? But it could be that phishing attack. It could be malware on your system. It could be that an incorrect invoice has been paid because someone has specifically targeted you, and money has been sent out of the organization. So lots of range of things, but take the time to actually ask that question in meetings and practice it at lots of different levels of the organization. Cheers, Ross. Next slide, please. Like I said, practice it. It does not have to be perfect, but that command, control, communication, and decision making is really, really important. Who's going to make decisions? Who is authorized to speak to the press? Who's authorized to speak to your cyber insurance kind of company? Who is it that's going to make the tough decisions around paying ransoms or not? Does everybody know what the policy might be? And again, my experience, I think we see a lot of plans that have statements, but they don't necessarily have, thoughts around how things might work practically. If our main email system works, we'll fall back to our backup system. Great. What happens if you need to authenticate to that backup system via a mobile phone that isn't working anymore because that's had to be turned off and isolated? Like, really think through that contingency of if some things were inaccessible and you couldn't reach your systems, applications, files, how are you going to continue on? how are you going to let your clients know? Do you have to let your clients know? Is there any kind of contractual agreement that you need to share details of a cyber attack that's live with any of your clients or customers? And do you need to do it in a particular time frame? So all of those types of things should be in your plan, so that people, even if they're a week, 2 weeks into your organization, they could pick that up and they could run that incident exercise. Keep it simple, but keep it very, very clear. Thanks, Ross. For me, a couple of top tips about how you get the most out of that incident exercise. Fundamentally, cyber is a whole organization problem. It's a whole organization risk. It's not just the risk of the technical department or your head of IT. It really is something that could cripple your organization. So make sure the senior leadership from across your different departments, if you've got HR, finance, marketing, all of them come together to really think about that problem. I spoke before around the how, not just the what. So really think through the how those contingencies are going to work. And if people have never come across it before, where's the advice that they could find those things? We often find that exercising in person is really the best way. So in extremis, obviously getting on systems like this, fine, but actually bringing teams together and exercising in person often is some really, really valuable conversation. I've put ensure system access is understood. We've come across a couple of instances where we were doing exercises with teams that were heavily reliant on their website. That's where their kind of e-business and online stores were. And when it came to thinking, well, who's got access to the website to maybe even think about holding messages up, people didn't know. So really think about, of all of the assets that you've got, all of those digital systems and assets that you've got, who is it that has got administrative access? If someone has authenticated something to a personal phone, not a mobile phone, if they weren't here, how would we get hold of those details? So really think through who's got access to things. Practice and embed those backup ways of working. And again, the templates there, if you have to do any kind of communication statements, you might have a cyber insurer that will lean in and help you with things like PR, but you might not. So it's definitely worth checking the types of services that are in your cyber insurance, if you have it, to see where they will provide help and advice. And if you haven't got the types of communications or PR services, that you've got some pre-prepared templates that might save time. We're experiencing an ongoing incident. This is what it means. When can you expect to be back up and running? That type of thing. There's some fantastic free tools. So the good news is this doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg. The National Cybersecurity Centre, NCSC, they have a tool called Exercise in a Box, which takes you through a great range of micro, small, kind of large exercises. Everything from I've lost a mobile phone, a company laptop has been left on a train, all the way up to those kind of complicated phishing attacks that leave ransomware on your systems and leave them unable to work. And it takes you through step by step. What do you need to think about? What do you need to do? How can you capture those actions? So if you haven't done it with your teams, it's definitely worth doing. And again, senior managers, if you're there, don't leave it to just your IT department to run. In an incident, your technical department will be run off their socks. They're the people that will be liaising with external kind of parties. It's overall business problem and risk. Like, make sure that you're leading that from kind of senior leadership downwards. Worst case, you can always get a third party to facilitate that. So people like Lucy and I will come in and help and either design something for you specifically, or we'll use Exercise in a Box to facilitate those kinds of discussions for you. Cheers, Ross. Thank you. So I suppose like biggest recommendation, invest in your cybersecurity. The stats that we were reading about and from Lucy's research, average cost of a UK data breach can be anywhere from around about 70,000 up to £3.4 million. The cost of cyber support, or even doing things from an individual point of view, NCSC tools are free, loads of guidance on there. But an incident exercise, if you were going to get somebody in to help you, can be from as little as £500 a day. So really think about if you are trying to build your cybersecurity resilience, reach out to the cyber resilience centres. Obviously, I'm hoping all of you on the call are members anyway, but Ross and Mark over at the CRC have got some fantastic resources. They work with companies like us all the time. We can hop on calls with you, give you a little bit of advice for free. It shouldn't cost the earth to get that initial bit of advice to you to make sure that you're protected. So really try and prioritize that cybersecurity resilience and make a plan to continually increase it. The attacks will only get more sophisticated and prevalent. So it's not a matter of if you'll be attacked these days, it's when. Don't be the least resilient organization, or you will be the person that gets attacked. Thanks, Ross.
Yeah, really, really great stuff, Stace. As we've mentioned, recommendations, backup, so regularly backup, store those separately, so physical and the cloud, and make sure that we're protecting from malware, so antivirus patching, so making sure we're doing those updates and enable that firewall if it's there, and have a firewall for sure. Protect yourself from the internet. Securing your devices, so again, security updates, biometrics, so Face ID, password protection, multi-factor authentication, so having a PIN and a password, and also changing those default passwords on your Wi-Fi, for example, avoiding phishing attacks. So look out for those signs we spoke about, and check your digital footprint. So look at your privacy settings. Do you know that person you've just connected with on LinkedIn? No, get rid of them. You don't know who they are behind these accounts. Instant response plan is what Stace has just been talking about. Write it and practice it and make sure you have one in place. And here is also another great free National Cybersecurity Centre cyber action plan, which you can use if you're a small organization. Individuals and families can also use it. Takes you through a very quick kind of multiple choice questionnaire, and at the end of it you get some recommendations that are very easy to implement and free. So it's definitely worth doing that, just to make sure you have the appropriate cyber hygiene, and you have lots of good great features for cyber implemented at home and in your organization.
Great, thanks, Lucy. I can see there's been a little bit of a flurry of questions that have come through, so I'll try and go through from the top down. What advice are we giving to combat the increase in phishing using QR codes that get users moving away from managed devices? I think for me, all about awareness. So there's a really good couple of case studies that we've certainly highlighted. The car park QR codes is a brilliant one. I mean, it's really simple. How many times do we go onto a car park QR codes to pay, kind of bits and bobs like that? So I've seen some really great case studies that certainly we're trying to get out there, and I can see a lot of contemporaries of ours are trying to kind of educate about. And I think that's it. I think it's educate. Don't trust QR codes as much as we maybe did. If you know that you're supposed to use a web page, we always recommend that people search for that specific web page rather than kind of use QR code. Have I encountered any phishing attacks generated by AI? I haven't. Has anybody on the call got any examples of that?
I certainly don't, Stacey, but a really good question nevertheless, and doubtless we will come across them in the future.
Yeah, and I think the thing certainly that in the kind of phishing world we've seen blogged about prolifically is, given the amount of data that is available on open platforms like LinkedIn, like Facebook, social media, etc., can AI write you the perfect phishing email that is most likely to resonate with you? I think that certainly is the kind of killer question that has been coming out, and how might we kind of then use AI to scan for those types of things in the future. So I haven't specifically. What I will do is go and ask my digital forensics team and see if they've got any specific things. So I'll happily get back to you from Radcliffe. Lucy, do we have IRP templates that can be adapted? Absolutely. I will share those with Ross, and he can get them out to the masses if that's okay. So we've got some really simple ones, and like I say, yeah, your incident response plan might be as simple as, in case of emergency, phone Ross and Mark. It might be as simple as that. It might be, in case of emergency, phone Lucy or cyber insurer. So it can be as simple as complicated as you need it to be. Lucy, I'll ping you one of the answers questions, so it's not just me chatting. Do online storage services such as OneDrive or Dropbox scan files as they're uploaded?
Scan files as they are uploaded. I'm assuming you mean, do they scan them for
Yeah,
malware?
for
this
malware,
one?
which I'm pretty sure that they do. I think there's still we still see a risk from that. So I think our advice for anything like that would be, if you're needing to transfer like large documents, it would be about sharing through functions that you would normally use. So like, for example, Ross and Lucy and I have been working on this presentation together. We've hosted it in a way where Ross can grant me access to this particular file using Microsoft, using authenticator apps. So you can definitely share with somebody, even from a kind of email point of view. When I go to access that particular file, I need to type in my my email address, and then I get a code that's sent to me. So there are definitely ways that you can share particular files in a bit more of a secure way. But I'm pretty sure that they do. But is it a fail-safe? Probably not. Any advice for startups? So no BC team. Yeah, I mean, we work with a lot of startups, Sizium and C3IA. We were startups at one time. I think for me, it would be really sit back and think about that holy trinity of cybersecurity. Lucy mentioned a little bit of it earlier. It's the integrity of your data. So how do you make sure it isn't altered? The availability of your systems and what you need, and the confidentiality of your data too. In amongst all of that is, what are your crown jewels? Like, what are the things that you cannot do without? Is it a database? Is it a particular bit of IP? Is it a thing that you do? Is it, what is the most important thing that keeps your business going? And what are the risks to it? So that's the first thing. What's the most important thing to us? What risks might we have? Is it our supply chain? Is it our people that might make a mistake? Is it the provision of the system? Are we massively reliant on like cloud suppliers for something like that? So take the time to think through that. And again, just work through from a really, really simple point of view. If we hadn't got access to those, or they were altered, or something was stolen, how catastrophic would it be, and how would we try and work through getting back up? So I'd say, start small and really think about those kind of crown jewels for your organization. Think about the threats that are there, and again, like, reach out to the free resources, reach out to CRC, reach out to teams like us. I'm happy to hop on a call with anybody and talk you through how you can get started and do a little bit of threat modeling. But all of those cyber hygiene bits that we've talked about on the conversation, those are the basics. And if you get the basics right, constantly update things, constantly think about good passwords, that's going to stand you in really good stead.
I'd like to just add, if I can, for that one, also really recommend the Cyber Essentials scheme for smaller organizations, or kind of any size organization, really. I think it kind of goes through a good baseline of cyber measures. A lot of them are covered today. That is actually included in the Cyber Essentials. It's a questionnaire which checks that you're doing, having those things in place. And I think that's quite a good starting point. And then you can move on to Cyber Essentials Plus, which includes vulnerability scans, as well as you proving that you have those types of measures in place as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Last one. Do you foresee a time in the future? Sorry, there's another one that's coming. So I thought that was the penultimate one. Do you foresee a time in the future when businesses are not vulnerable to a potential catastrophe by the click of a button? When will we start winning the fight against cyber criminals? Oh, great question. I don't think there will be. I think technology and sophisticated attacks, starting with those hostile state actors, are constantly developing. And even the constant development of AI. Every time we get a little bit closer, something else will be developed, and something else will be developed. It's a constantly evolving threat. So, is there a time when we're not going to be vulnerable? No, I think it's going to be even worse. We've seen over the past kind of 10 years how ransomware has evolved from being quite specific groups that will do something and develop kind of software, to now an entire business model where you've got specialists that will concentrate on getting access to organizations, specialists that will provide ransomware, brokers in the middle. Like, as much as the technology is evolving, all of the models around this is evolving as well. And what we see, starting with sophisticated hostile state actors, dribs down to criminals, and we'll get out into the masses. So yeah, I don't see a time when we will start to win. But I think at a national level, and an international level, what we have got is more cooperation than we've ever seen before. We've started to see people kind of legislate against what is kind of good, internet rules of engagement. So for every time the criminals have got a win, I think law enforcement and kind of cyber professionals have a win as well. But it has to be that kind of both sides.
Thanks, Stacey. I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there.
No, we've got. I just said we've got one more question.
Well, very, very quickly, because people are starting to fall out now. So I want to catch everybody before they go. So very, very briefly, is there a secure email provider to send documents to clients?
Yeah, I mean, Lee said egress. I think there, there's another couple, like Mimecast or Proton Mail might be another like really good one. But yeah, egress is up there.
Jay, that was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. We had a really, really good attendance. So thank you everybody for attending this morning, and thank you particularly to Lucy and Stace. Fascinating stuff, and thank you for the Office of support to all the people who have attended this morning. And I just reiterate that if you need anything, get hold of us, get hold of Lucy at C3IA, get hold of Stacey at Siziam, and we can help you out. And as I say, I know pretty much all of you are already members, but just consider making sure that your supply chain know about our existence, and we can help them to maintain their security. Anyway, that being it, thank you very much for attending. Really, really enjoyed it, and see you all very soon.
Great. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ross. Cheers, EC.
Thanks. Bye.